Welcome. Can you do pit fire when it's cold and snowy like today? Yeah, you can, but there is some challenges. But today I'm going to jump into it anyway and do some pit fire. I'm going to show you how I do it. Besides the fact that it is super cold, it's -7 degrees and my fingers are freezing up. It's actually very unusual for Denmark, but it had a whole week of this sort of heavy frost and a bit of snow. One of the challenges is that my oil drums have frozen up, so there's ice all over them and I need to somehow free them of that. I think I'm going to use a hammer or something. The other thing is that I usually pack my pots outside, apply the combustibles and wrap them up in tin foil and whatever I do. But today it's just too cold to do that. So I'm going to go inside and do that. It's a little bit messy, but I will work it out. I will of course have to pack the oil drum out here and light it, but that should be okay because fire have no problem when it's cold. You can still have a fire, you can still light it up, and actually it's going to feel really nice and warm standing around the oil drum in the night. So let's get on with the work. Now I'm inside and I'm ready to prepare my pots for the pit fire. Unlike when I'm glazing, I don't actually need to wash them because we're not applying a glaze that needs to stick to the pot. We're wrapping them up in combustibles and salt and oxides and things, and the fumes from that are going to attach itself to the clay. So we don't need to wash it. That's nice. However, I want to check that the bottom is nice and smooth, that we don't have any sharp edges. This one does a little bit. I'll just use a diamond grinder and just lightly go over it. Because if I do it later, after the pit fire, I'm going to grind off the nice Pitfire potters. So I just want to do it now. It's not that much, it's just a little bit. Most of the other pots look nice, so I don't need to do anything about them. So now I'm ready to wrap the pots and get them ready for the pit fire. I'm going to start out with the lidded jars. And I'm going to give them first a couple of layers, maybe 3 or 4 layers, of my cobalt sulfate solution. It's just cobalt sulfate, about 50 grams, in about 1 liter of water, a little less here. It's funny with cobalt that it's red when it's in a powder and fluid, but it turns blue if I reach the right temperature. It's a little bit difficult to attach to the pot, so I'm probably going to give it a couple of layers. We're going to do that on both of them. Then I'm going to supplement with a little bit of my cobalt, on my copper carbonate. And finally, I'm going to drip a little bit of ferric chloride. So let's move on with that. To manage it, I always use these plastic containers, bowls. I think I use them for washing up. I usually do it outside because it is rather messy. So now that I do it inside, I need to be extra careful. I'm going to put, just a second, I'm going to put the pots into this. I'm just going to pour it over. So I'm not actually going to hold them and touch them as I usually do. When you want to touch it, working with these soluble salts or water dilutable metals, you need to wear gloves. You need to wear some protection for your eyes. You don't want to get this on your fingers. You don't want to get it in your eyes. But now I'm just going to put them here and I'm going to pour it over. I'm just going to put them here and I'm going to pour it over so I won't get in touch with it with my bare hands. So it should be fine. Just going to shake this up a bit and just going to pour it over. Like this. And then I'm going to let it dry for a little bit because it has to get some time to soak in. And then after a few minutes, I can give it another layer and maybe even another layer after that. I'm going to put that aside and then I'm going to work on the other ones. I have more of these buckets. And I'm going to do the same for a couple of my vases. So I think for these ones, I'm actually going to put it, it's a little more tricky. I could just put them sideways, but then it wouldn't get anything on one side. So I think again, I'm going to put them upside down, upside up. It is. So let's have two of them. I think I can. So I will start out with that, and again with the cobalt sulfate. And I see I already messed up my table a little bit, so I will clean that in a second. The sulfates are not so bad when it comes to how much they poison your table and the tools. It's a lot worse when it comes to the ferric chloride, because that is so messy. So I'll figure out what I do with that. So I'm just gonna let this soak in a little bit. Now they're almost dry. I can touch the side and it's all soaked in. So I will give it a little more. But then as you see, I'm running out. But it's not actually because I used all of it. It's just that it's down here in the bottom of my bucket. So now they're dried again. But I have no more sulfate in my bottle. So I need to pour over what is in my tray here. You see, there's still lots of it. So I'm just going to put it back into the bottle, and then we're ready to take another go. And now you can see I did actually use some of it, but not that much. So I'm ready to give it another go. And now, it's funny because you can't see that there's anything on it, except you can maybe see that there's some places where there's nothing. So there's a difference, and it's just very subtle in this state. So I'm gonna let it dry a little bit again. Now they had dried up again, but I just want to make sure that I didn't leave too much of it inside. So for this, I'm going to wear my gloves because again, I don't want to get this sulfate on my fingers. It's not really etching, but the problem is that it actually absorbs through your skin, and it is rather toxic. So you don't want that on your skin. So there wasn't actually that much in it, but just to make sure. Put that here. Same thing with this one. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in this. So, like that. And again, we just want to empty whatever's left here. Put it back in my bottle for next time. That's it. Clean the table. Yeah. So now we are ready for the last layers. I think this is good enough too. So just going to remove this. And I think there might be a little bit in these ones. So yeah, there was a little bit. And this one. So you can see we actually use quite a lot, and it's not in the buckets and it's not inside the pot, so it must have attached itself to the surface. So that's good. And again, just keeping my table clean and cleaning the inside of these buckets, because Now moving on to the next colorant. The next one I'm going to use is copper sulfate dissolved in water. And also it's about 50 grams in a liter, something like that. The more colorful it is, of course. But for this one, I'm not going to put over the entire pot. Instead, I'm just going to splash it over the side. So for this, I need gloves. I'm just going to hold it like this and pour it over. Like this. The same thing, I'm going to take the lid on its own and the jar. And then I'm going to let it dry again and then pour it over one more time. It actually dries pretty quickly, so I'm just going to give this another go. And again, unlike glazes, there's no problem with getting some of the colorants on the bottom. It's not a glaze, it's not going to melt, and besides, it's not going to sit on the shelf. So you don't have those usual problems that you have when you do glaze work. In fact, I like to have a bit of colors on the bottom too. So I think maybe it's enough. Maybe I want to give it just one more splash before I end this. But again, they need to dry. And now I'm going to give it the last layer. I'm going to give it mostly on the lower side, I think, for this. That's it. Now we'll pour back the remaining part of this copper sulfate. And as you can see, we also used quite a lot of it. So it's not here, it's not inside the pot, so it must be absorbed into the pot, which is perfect. And again, just going to clean the inside here, because now we're going to move on with the ferric chloride. Using ferric chloride is somewhat controversial. It's used for etching when you do prints for electronics and stuff, because it etches copper. Some people also claim that it etches your fingers dramatically and it's so dangerous. I actually, by accident, not by choice, but got some on my fingers. I couldn't feel anything. Definitely, you don't want to get it in your eyes or in your mouth or anything like that. And I mean, protect yourself. Use some rubber gloves. That's enough to stop any etching. But it is very, very colorful. So if you splash something on an unpainted table, some wood or something, it's just not going to go away. Or your clothing. This is my work clothes, so it's okay. But you have to be a little bit careful. But today, and by the way, I buy it in this 40% solution. You can dilute it with water. I diluted it 1-to-1 with water, so it becomes something like 20%. It works okay too, but I like the strong color it gives me, so I keep it like this. And again, this is not going to be over the entire pot, so I'll just hold it, and I have a glove on this hand, and I'll just pour it over, so there's no risk of getting it on my my skin. And I definitely don't want that. I'm not going to give it too much. I'm just going to give it a few sprinkles like this. And I know from experience that it can look really good. And this is just going to get a sprinkle on each side. I'm going to do the same on the lid. Not on the entire lid, just some of it. I actually want on the knob as well. And just a little bit on the sides. And this, you could give it multiple layers, but you don't really need that. It's a very strong colorant. You'll see when we're finished. So, I'm also going to put this back in the bottle. We used very little of this. I got a couple of liters of it, and it's going to last a lifetime, almost. I'm going to use this for the next batch of pots, also using ferric chloride, so I'm just going to put this aside. Pitfire pottery, you can do it in many ways, of course. I use it, I always do my pitfires in an oil drum, just to contain the fire, and it's easier for me to work with. Traditionally, of course, you just digged a pit hole in the ground and you made a fire and put the pots in there. It's just a little more messy. I like the oil drum way of doing it. But also, you can just put your pot in it, put the fire or the wood around it, or sawdust or whatever you use, and lit the fire. I also very often use a saggar. A saggar is like a container. I use tinfoil. You could also use a clay saggar or metal can or something. The tinfoil is just very easy to use. Some people will claim that it's not pitfire because it's saggar fire. But I don't really see a contrast between those two, because it's pitfire and the wrapping is a saggar, yes. But saggar you can fire in electric, you can fire it in gas, you can fire it in wood-fired kiln. But saggaring and the way you fire are two different things. So in this particular fire, I'm going to use some of it in the tinfoil saggar and some of it not. And why do I do that? Well, especially with the sulfates, especially with cobalt sulfate, you need very high temperature. Fire is usually around 800 degrees maximum. The embers can be a little more, maybe up to 1,000 degrees, depending on how much oxygen you can get into the kiln or the oil drum. And cobalt sulfate looks best, in my opinion, when you reach about 950 degrees Celsius. And that's a bit difficult, especially if you wrap it up in tinfoil. So for these ones, I'm just going to put it into the bonfire and fire it without any tinfoil. There's another advantage. I'm going to put some wood shavings, and they're going to create smoke. And it's going to give it, hopefully, a beautiful black surface. Maybe not all over it, but at some places. Going to create some nice contrast. So that's one part of it. The other parts, the ones that I haven't made yet, I will put into tinfoil saggars. That way I can also wrap in some combustibles, put them closer to the pot, and when they start to fume, all that fume can only go into the pot because it's contained within the tinfoil. So it also has some advantages. So we're going to do both. So I'm just going to let the first pot, the two lidded jars, and the vases, let them dry and get ready for the last stuff that I'm going to add. I'm going to get back to you on that. But I have the other 3 vases left that I'm going to treat and wrap up in tinfoil. First, I'm going to give them some ferric chloride. I'm not going to give them the sulfate, just the ferric chloride. So let's move on with that. For the remaining vases, I just added some splashes of ferric chloride. For this one, I covered it entirely. And this one is sort of special because it haven't been burnished completely and I haven't given it terra, so it's not as shiny as I usually like it. It was actually intended for Wrappong fire, but now I went ahead and did it in the Pitfire. And this one has only terra on it, so I didn't apply any slip, and it's the dark clay as you see. But I'm still going to see how that turns out. So now I've done all the pots with the basic layers of the sulfate and the ferric chloride. So now it's time to pour back whatever is left of this ferric chloride and put that aside. There we go. So now I'm going to put out some newspapers and I'm going to put the pots on that because I want them to sort of drip off and dry. Now the pots have dried so I can touch them. And I'm ready to do the last step before going outside and packing up the oil drum and lighting on fire. That's the fun part of it. Anyway, as I said, half of them I'm going to wrap in tinfoil and half of them I'm just going to put in the fire without any saggar. So let's start with the ones with the tinfoil. I use this very thick industrial tinfoil. You can usually buy it in like professional kitchen stores and stuff. And it's also very wide and it's very long, I think 500 meters or something. So it lasts a long time. So I had good experience with this. I start out by rolling one layer. And now I'm ready to do the first pot. So this is one of the pots that I'm going to use. And I will add some combustibles. I will add a little bit of salts and I will wrap it up in this tinfoil. There's a lot of things you can add to the pot that will give it nice colors. But one of my all-time favorites is, oh, I've got to watch out and don't drop it, is banana peels. After we eat them, I hang them up outside to dry. And luckily enough, we eat a lot of bananas. As you can see, this is from the past year or something. It gives it a wonderful orange, yellowish color. So it plays really well with the ferric chloride. Another one that I really like is corn leaves. So let me just take some of that. Corn leaves, like this. They also have a color, funny enough, sort of similar to what you get from banana peels. So let's use a little bit of this on this pot. So I'm just going to put a layer here. Going to put it on top, and I'm going to wrap something on top here as well. Let me just see if I have some more here. I do, a little bit here, and maybe a bit more banana peels, like this. I'm also going to add some straw, mostly on the inside, because that's going to create smoke and will hopefully make it a little bit darker on the inside. And finally, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. I'm going to add a little bit of copper carbonate. Now I just need to sort of wrap it up with the tin foil. It's going to be a little bit tricky now and then, but it usually goes okay. So something like this, and this, close it up, tuck it in, and that was the first pot. Don't make it too even. It's nice to have some air holes in it, so air pockets, so there will be different atmosphere in there. where it's closed and the air can't escape, there will be some sort of a reduction, which, in case you know about reduction fire, will help create beautiful colors. So I'll just wrap up another piece of tin foil. Sorry, it's a little bit noisy, but just to make sure that my my saggar is completely closed. Actually, I need one more piece for this. This is sort of a big vase. So, so this way and this way. So now this is ready to be put in the oil drum. And now I'm gonna make the next one. I'm gonna use this matte one. And for that, I'm gonna use another one of my favorites. I was just looking for it. Steel wool. Steel wool is really, really nice because it creates this black, sometimes red, if you get a reduction atmosphere within the saggar. And if you pull it out like this, you get this spider web sort of texture, which is really, really nice. It even if it's just black, it creates some wonderful stripes along your pot, and I really like that. It's generally very good, but like always, don't put too much on it. A little bit goes a long way. And for this, I'm also going to use copper wire, because copper wire, again, it creates usually a black stripe. Sometimes, if the atmosphere is correct, you will get the stripes in sort of a reddish color, which can be really, really beautiful. So let me just roll some of this out and see if I have this cutter. Yeah. So, yeah, it's gonna move around a little bit until the end, but it's usually okay. So something like this. And now it's also time to put in some of the banana peels. Can put them over the side, and we can. Let me see here. We need to wrap this off, something like this, and we can put some on the bottom here. Yeah, and that's gonna be good. Also, in general, let me just get it back. Nuts and seeds are good, and this is sort of a leftover from Christmas. So this is good to use. These are from walnuts, but all kinds of nuts usually gives nice colors. I'm going to put some of that in here. I'm also going to add a bit of salt and a little bit of my copper carbonate. And let me just see here what I was thinking. Yeah, I think actually maybe a little more banana peels for this one, because it doesn't have so much else. So I think that's gonna be it. There we go. Oh yeah. I want to put some of the hay inside again. I'm hoping this will help create more of a dark inside. I'm gonna wrap it up. There we go. I'm just gonna give it a couple of new layers. One more, and then I think we're done. That's it. This one is entirely covered in ferric chloride. So for this, I definitely want to put some of the steel wool, but I may also want to try out another thing. Another option is to use these sponges. You see, it's a sponge, but then when you unwrap it, let me see if I can get into it. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. I think it's coming here. Then when you unwrap it, you realize it's actually a tube that you can pull over the pot, and it will create these fishnet-like patterns. I think this one is a little bit too fat for this particular one, so I will use it on one of the more slim ones. So here I'm just going to use the steel wool. And now I can put the hay inside. And it's okay that there's a little bit outside, because it will help fume some dark colors into it, which can end up being really, really beautiful. And for this, I'm also going to add some of the corn leaves and banana peels, some salt. Salt generally help the fuming, so it can be really good. And for this one, I'm going to try something that I usually don't do. So it may turn out really good, or it may not. But I'm going to use a little bit of cobalt carbonate. And now, just wrapping it up. And you can push it a little bit so you create these pockets of air. It usually helps create interesting patterns of colors. This is the last one where we didn't use the sulfate. So for this, I'm also going to use the tinfoil saggar. And I think copper wire would look really good on this one. So I'm going to start out this time with the copper wire. Just going to take, I don't know, something like this. Copper, and any metals for that matter, is quite expensive these days. But I found these rolls, and there's, what is it, I don't know, 1 kilo or something. So there's hundreds of meters. And I had it for years. It actually lasts a long time. Also bought a thicker version. That's also nice for certain things. So that wasn't actually too expensive. So if you look around, search online, you should hopefully find something. It can be a little bit tricky to get this wrapped on and making it stick. But if you play around with it a little bit, it usually works out. So, something like this. It should give it a nice pattern. You probably need to hold on to it and then wrap it into to the pot finally. And I think this is gonna work okay. Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm gonna add some of the steel wool here too. I also like to use seaweed, but I ran out of seaweed, so I don't have any more of that. You could also use some feathers. Any organic material will burn and create some sort of pattern. So we'll try and do a little bit of that. And we're gonna add a little more of the corn and some of the copper carbonate. Not so much for this one, and some salt. And I'm going to use some more of the nuts. And of course, I'm going to add some hay to the inside. So I think all in all, that should be good. It looks a little bit chaotic now, I admit that, but it usually works out really well. Whew, it broke. I need some more tin foil. Sometimes, especially if you have leaves and stuff, it sort of breaks through, and then you just need to wrap it up again. This one is a little more tricky. I admit that, but some of it's gonna fall out, but that's okay. See, in the end, it always works out some way or another. So, now we have this little cocoon ready to get fired. Now the 2 little jars, I'm not going to add any combustibles or any salts to this because it's just going to be in the pot. So instead I just wrap some copper wire around it to secure the lid so it doesn't fall off during the fire. And then when I put it in the kiln, I'm going to sprinkle some combustibles, some salts, and maybe some copper carbonate, and that's it. Now for the last one, I have a couple of things that I want to try here. I actually tried it before. This is salt water, and there's some strings in here, some rope, thin rope, and this is a cobalt sulfate dissolved, and there's a string in here, and I'm gonna try and dig that out. But it is copper sulfate, so cobalt sulfate, so I don't want to pollute myself with that. I'm gonna use a glove. So, see, this is a string of clothing, one of my old sheets, and it can potentially create, I'm just going to use this, create some interesting colors on the side of this. So I'm just going to, it's almost going to glue because it's wet, which is fine. I don't usually add too many wet elements to the pots, but when I do, I never had any problems with that. So this is a string, and it's been soaking in salt water, actually for, I don't know, a year or something. You don't need to soak it that long, but it's just been sitting there. I haven't used it. So I'm just going to use this around this pot. The salt and the organic material from the rope is hopefully going to give us, oh, no, it didn't actually work here. The rope and the salt that it's been soaking in is hopefully going to give us some interesting patterns here. I don't know for sure, but we could be lucky. Except it's not that easy to attach. I wish I could hammer it on or something, but it's not going to work. So something like this, something like this, something like this, and then I'm going to tie it here. It's just going to be very careful when you handle these, because otherwise it's just going to fall off. Of course, you can reattach it, but I'm just trying to be as thorough as possible. So now we have this salt-soaked string around it. That's it. Now we're ready to prepare the kiln. The first challenge is going to get the lid off my drum, because there's so much ice that it's glued. So I brought a hammer, and let's see if I can get some of the ice off this way. And maybe loosen it. Yeah, that helps. And of course it's full of ice. So I think I'm gonna try and get rid of that, because I don't want that cooling factor up there. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it here for a while. When I start burning the oil drum, of course, I hope this is going to melt. So it's probably going to be okay. Next step is to prepare my drum. In the bottom of the drum, I have this bonfire grill that is really good, and a couple of stones down here that helps create a bit of airflow under the fire. And that helps create a more hot fire, which is something that I want. So I just need to clean this a little bit. And this is from the last fire, from the summer. It's not super important that you clean it completely. You just want to get rid of something that's blocking the grill here. I think it's also frozen. So you take a look downside here. You can see that there's two bricks that are high fire bricks, are made for kiln building, so they can sustain the heat. And it's difficult to see now, but there's holes in the bottom. This is below the grill, and there's some holes above the grill. So that's going to create a bit of circulation of air, so we can get some flow and not just fire at the top. We are going to start the fire, from the top. It's going to burn down, but we will create some suction and hopefully a more vivid or rapid fire. So now I need to start the layering. And there are different ways to do that. Some people start with sawdust, but if I do that, then everything drops through the grill. So I'll usually start with some hay, or I have a Christmas tree that is too dry. It needs to go out. It's way past Christmas anyway. So I'm going to cut off some leaves from that and use it to create a bed. And then on top of that, we can add sawdust, hay, whatever you want, and then start stacking with wood. So here's a little bit of my Christmas tree. I'm going to put that at the bottom to create sort of a bed and insulation so that I can spread some sawdust and some hay before I start adding the pots. Next up, I'm going to add some hay. Not all of it, because I want to sprinkle some of it also between the layers, but enough to create some smoke from below. So now I think we have enough to start adding the pots. I'm going to start out with these 3 pots. So 2 of them with no saggar, with no tin foil, and 1 of them with. I need to put something that is pretty strong at the bottom because the other ones are going to fall on them. So let me use this. Now I'm going to add some sawdust, and of course we need some wood because the Christmas tree and the hay is not going to create much of a fire. I usually get my sawdust from a local sawmill, and but they were closed now, and I didn't have any more. So I went to a local pet shop, and they also have this. They use it for small animals in the home, and it's a lot more expensive, but it's still okay. I think it was like, I don't know, 50 cents or something. So I think I'll survive. In my experience, when it comes to wood, it's best to use different, I got hay in my hair, different kinds of wood. Oak and heavy sorts of wood burn slowly. They burn a long time, but they don't create the same high degrees of fire. On the other hand, when you have pine wood and lighter kind of wood, it burns faster, creates more heat. So the combination of the different kinds of wood, in my experience, works really well. I'm going to start with some scrap wood. I have some leftovers. I'm sorry, but for the last part of this video, the sound is probably not going to be as good because my primary microphone ran out of battery. I have to finish this before it gets dark. Now I'm ready to add the next layer of pot. And I'm sorry if I'm shouting, but I'm afraid the sound is not going to be as good. But let's move on. So the last 3 ones with tin foil. And then I just need the 2 little jars. And for the little jars, I want a little more sawdust because I want to have them sitting in sort of like a bed of sawdust. I'm just going to put them here on the side. And then I'm going to add some more combustibles on top of that. A little bit of materials. See how that turns out. And I also have some bigger pieces I'm going to add to the top. Add this, because this is super dry and small pieces, so it's easier to ignite it. I will see you in a couple of hours. I'm going to light the thing. Now it's time to light the fire. It's dark. I'm not even sure if you can see me, but you will in a moment. So one of the good things about pit firing in the wintertime is that normally I do it in the summer and have to be very careful with the fire and the dry grass and stuff. You don't have that problem now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do what I usually do. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of these, you call them starters, like these little bricks that I usually use inside of my fireplace. Just to make it easier to start up. And I'm going to cheat because I'm also going to sprinkle some alcohol. Pure alcohol. Alcohol is a nice thing. You shouldn't drink this, but it's nice for the pit fire. So just going to sprinkle some of this. It's an easy starter. And I have my my fire starter here. So now you can see me, and I'm gonna light it. The fire! It's so nice and warm here. Now the fire is burning. It's going really well. It should with that sort of starter, even though some of it is a bit cold and frozen, but it's not wet, so I think it should work. So now I'm just gonna let it burn for at least a couple of hours, and I'm gonna let it die out slowly. And in the end, I'm gonna put the lid on and sort of choke it, and then I'm gonna leave it overnight. And tomorrow, it's gonna see how it's gonna look. Always exciting. Yeah, it is a little bit smoky now, but that's a good thing about doing it at night and in the winter, because nobody is sitting outside enjoying their balconies or anything, so it doesn't actually disturb anybody. I doubt anybody will notice it. We'll see. There's something really nice about fire. Playing with fire is part of the joy of doing pitfire pottery. It truly is. When you start seeing the light in the lower holes in the barrel, it's a very good sign, because that means that the fire have traveled from above and down there. I love the colors when the fire reaches the copper and cobalt and these salts. It's just, it's almost like fireworks, and it looks so beautiful. Probably a little bit toxic, but well. Now I put the lid on the oil drum. It's been firing for maybe 3.5 hours. Full flames, very good fire, considering the fact that it is winter, it's cold, and I think it's gonna be okay. So now the flames have gone, it's just glowing, and I put the lid on, and that will create sort of a reduction atmosphere in there. There's still the holes at the bottom, and it's gonna suck up some air and into the glowing wood. So now it's just a matter of waiting. And in the morning, it should be cold enough to open and see the results. So I will go to sleep and see you in the morning. Good morning. It's time to open the kiln or the oil drum. And as always, I'm super excited because it is somewhat more unpredictable when you do pitfire. Even though I've been doing this for many years now, I'm still, surprised sometimes. Very often happy, but always surprised. So let's go and take off the lid and see how it turned out. The first thing that I look for is if it all cracked up. Because the pieces are falling down on each other and they could potentially break each other. And of course, I don't like that. The first look, it looks good. They look like they survived. So let's take out the pieces. It is a little bit messy. Now because it's winter time, I'm sure this is cold. If it's in the summer and you open it up in the morning, it may still be a little bit warm, and there could be pieces that are very warm, so always use gloves. But today it is completely cold. So I'm just gonna use my fingers and wash them. So the first little jar, it actually looks very good. Can you see? Of course now there's a lot of dust on it, but can you see there's some green, some blue, and of course some of the black smoke. So I think this is going to be good once we clean it up. And when you take them out, be very careful, because when you take one out, the things may fall apart and it could break each other. And at this point, you don't want to do that. It survived so much. Oh, this looks even more interesting. Look how there's flashes of the red ferric chloride. And if we remove these copper wires, you can see that some traces, and there's almost like metallic look here, and some blue. I think that's going to be good. And here's one in the tin foil. And the first thing I look for is, did the tin foil dissolve? And at some places it did, which means that it was at least 700 degrees, because at 700 degrees, the tin foil dissolves. And I want it to be as hot as possible. On the other side, however, it didn't. So it didn't get the same temperature all over. Let's just see. But still, this is not bad. This is what I'm looking for in pitfire. So definitely a good result from the first look. And here's one of the pieces that wasn't wrapped in tin foil. And it also, look at these drawings here. Looks like I painted something, which I didn't, I can't. And here you have the black from the smoke. So this is really interesting too. And here's another one in tin foil. See, this one didn't dissolve at all. So apparently my fire was not perfect. It's probably due to the quality of the wood that I was using this time. But you can see I put the hay inside, and that all fumed. So it does give me not a dark, but not a black, but a dark inside. And this is the one that wasn't burnished. So it's got a more matte surface. I can polish it and I can give it some wax, and it will create better surface. But it does look interesting. I'll take a closer look when we get inside. This one dissolved a little more. Apparently, the fire didn't turn up as much as I would like it. It's just something that I have to adjust. I don't think it's because of the weather. I think it's more due to the wood I was using, the way I was stacking it. I think I need to do that better next time. But look at this. It's always also look very, very good. When this gets polished and washed, it will be really good. And the last piece was better dissolved. Oh, this is really good. Look at this. I love these blue colors. They're so difficult to get right, but in this case, it turned out nice. And of course, the yellow, the red. And you see these copper wire stripes. I really like that. So that was all the pots. Now I have to go inside and get rid of all the dust. Maybe scrub them a little bit. There could be some combustibles that's burned into it. I can usually scrub it off and then do the final waxing or some sort of surface treatment. I'll get on with that and then we'll take a look at the final results. Now I'm inside and I've finished cleaning up the pots inside and out. I got rid of all the dust and I polished them with a wax. I'm using, in this case, something called Renaissance wax. I think you can see it here. There are many different kinds of wax. Some use beeswax and other kinds of wax, furniture wax. This one gives me a nice shine. I have other waxes that are a little more silky matte. And you can also spray it with acrylic spray. I do that sometimes if you want it really shiny. There are all kinds of ways to treat the surface. I do always treat the surface because it is matte, and if you don't treat it, then it leaves finger marks and you can't really wash it off or anything. So I always do that. For the inside, I also treat it because, as you probably know, lo-fi pottery like this is not completely waterproof. It's not like the water is running out of it if you fill it up, but it's just not completely waterproof. I found a component, something I found locally here in Denmark. I'm not sure if you can find exactly the same, but it's used for brickwork and it actually seals them perfectly. So when I use it, I give it two rounds of it, then it gets completely waterproof. I tested it with like a very big vase, 5 liters or something, filled it up with water and put it on a napkin for 2 weeks. And there wasn't even a trace of anything. So it's completely waterproof that way. Of course, that component is not food safe, but for a vase, that's fine. Anyway, I think they came out really well. Most of them, almost like I wanted. If you look at something like this, I think it's just beautiful. And there is one thing though, because as you may remember, some of them were on a sort of a whitish clay where I just applied my white tercicolata. And some of them were on the brown clay, this one for example, and I applied a layer of porcelain slip and then the tercicolata. And then there was actually one here that didn't have any tercicolata. It was intended for ragu, but I'm using it for this event also. There is a difference. The ones that didn't have porcelain slip but pure tercicolata, like this one and this one, they come out the most shiny. The ones where I put the porcelain on, it's maybe difficult to see on the video, but they are a little less shiny. Maybe it's easier to see on my little jars. I mean, they are shiny. It's just not as shiny as the ones that don't have the porcelain slip. I'm not exactly sure, but it has something to do with the surface. It changed the surface. It's not as smooth when you put the porcelain on. I may want to try a different variation later on, where I put the porcelain slip on and then burnish that before I put the tercicolata on. It may make it more shiny, but I think it's still okay. I mean, it still have that beautiful look that we all want from the Pitfire. This one, however, just want to put a few notes on that, because this was not burnished, and there was no tesicolata. So of course I have a more matte surface, and I deliberately put it, gave it a treatment in the fire where I wanted this more dark, and I think it actually comes out pretty well. It's matte, silk matte, I would say. There's a bit of shine on it, but not that much. But it still have, I mean, there's some quality to this. I know actually lots of my customers love these dark vases, so I'm expecting this one to go really fast. I also think that the little jars came out nice. Remember the ones I did where I didn't put the porcelain on? It was just the dark clay, and they came out too dark, I think, in my mind. But these ones comes out much lighter, one side, dark on the other side, because there was the sawdust, remember I put them in. But I think this is a lot more live. The question is, of course, if this sort of color, this color, sort of treatment is appealing to keeping foods in. I'm not so sure about that. You could do it, and I could seal it with the liquid quartz I have to make it food safe. But again, I'm not sure. So maybe I will make some small ones and just have them for jewelry or something. That might be a better solution. But now I made it, and the test came out well. So all in all, I'm happy. I think they turned out beautiful, and at least I proved that pitfire in the winter, even when it's snowy and below 0 degrees, is indeed possible. It was a cold event, and my fingers were like hurting when I got back in, but I made it. So I hope you enjoyed this small winter pitfire event, and if you did, please subscribe, share, write a comment, come back. I will, as usual, have a new video coming out every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central European Time. At least I try to. So I just hope to see you there. Have a great day.